being led by bad data. I have, this is really a 2021, 2022 trend. I've interviewed so many people that love data. What is this fascination with data, right? I mean, yes, in the digital age, data is what we live off and it's what we want to work with. But I feel if someone says to me in an interview that they love data, I'm like 90% of the time, I'm like, I'm off. Like, you have no idea what that means, right? You need processes and frameworks to understand what data you should be working with, what data makes sense, like what data should I pay attention to. This also goes back to the exercise we were speaking about earlier, in that you need to know who your target audience is, who is, what is your message, what is the offer we're going to put out, like what's the stuff that should go out into the market. And then the data needs to validate that. The data needs to tell that story. The data needs to tell the story of what is actually going on, not just point out metrics that either look good or look bad. And I think this is a huge problem. I'm curious to understand, are there any, like in your line of work, are there any really common data mistakes or observations you see people making? Do they sort of come to you with questions and go like, hey, why is this data this way, right? Or why is this metric looking like this?
A lot of the times they just don't even have good data set up. No good data tracking, right? They haven't even gone to the effort to set up their Google Analytics, or they're coming from, because we don't do traffic. We're more like a consultative company, like growth experts. And data, this is the problem with data. It can be manipulated to tell whatever story you want. It's super easy to manipulate data to mean whatever the hell you want it to mean. And that's what a lot of agencies do. And so they're like, oh, look at this agency. It got this and this and this. And I was like, well, what are they doing with that data? What does that mean? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, it's just a number. Like they're putting numbers in front of your face. And so what we want to work with clients to do is actually figure out the metrics that matter. Yeah. What are the metrics that matter? It's usually revenue and sales down the end of the funnel. So what might happen is they're like, I want more conversions. I want more conversions on an ebook. Or I want more conversions on my offer. And I'm like, that's easy. I can pump up more conversions, but you might get a 30% uplift. Then your sales team is busy with crappy leads because you wanted more conversions and you actually end up making less revenue. And so it's just understanding what's the North Star metric to optimize for, right? What metrics are you actually optimizing for? So people often get overwhelmed with all this data and they don't know what they're actually trying to optimize their operations and their marketing for. That's probably the biggest mistakes I see is, they've got too much and it's analysis paralysis, either nothing or too much.
Yeah. So the conversation came up this morning with Leon, one of our content strategists, and we were talking about the term vanity metrics. And there's certain terms in the industry that when you've heard them enough times, you're like, is this even relevant anymore? And we had a little debate around that, right? And we concluded that, no, it is relevant. It's the language that people are using. And it's a very fair representation of how some of these metrics are taken on board, and whether that's, CTRs and impressions and whatever else that people pay attention to. But the sort of the takeaway that I had reflecting on that was that also I believe the conversation does need to change a little bit too, in that there's a lot of metrics that are called vanity metrics, and they're vanity metrics in the wrong context. But for the purpose of understanding and analyzing what you're doing, they could have a lot of relevance. And they do have a lot of relevance, but you need to be able to tell what the story is, right? If you've got, so going back to my earlier comments about ad accounts, where we look at, 8 different ad groups, if you're running search campaigns, and 3 of those ad groups are running really low CTRs. Now, that, if it's a direct comparison, that could be a reflection of a poorer message. You could go, hey, like in these groups, we're just not doing well. We're not saying the right thing. The copy's bad. Your copy's shit. But if you dove deeper into it, it may actually be a reflection of the fact that, well, no, we're bringing in a much broader subset of traffic, and it's costing us a lot less overall to convert a customer. So to your point, what is the revenue we're generating from that? It's costing us much less to convert a customer, but you know what? The CTR's low. Who gives a shit, right? And it's that like sort of second, third, fourth, fifth level of data analysis and the interrogation of like why you're questioning something. That's really what needs to be indoctrinated into teams, because Now, data is really just, it's information, right? But insights is what you need to extract from it. It's insights that we're looking for intelligence here. But there's, to use your own words, like analysis paralysis. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Analysis paralysis. To use your own words, like that's where people are getting stuck because they've got so much that they can look at, and it's almost like, well, not almost. It is like if I have a bias or a belief, I can confirm it with the data that's in front of me. So one of the things we've really been advocating for every team, company to build is a data and research model. So having one centralized document for how you get your research, where you collect it, what insights you should have within it, and then what some common points of data are for your ecosystem. Now, I know you said that you don't run traffic, but you obviously look at points of a person's or of a company's funnel where traffic is landing. So you're still having to work through these things. But how often would it be that you talk to a marketing or sales or leadership team and they have no idea which data they're actually supposed to be paying attention to, right?
Yeah, very often.
And that's that's sort of like I really feel that shortfall, to kind of connect it back to one of our earlier conversations, that shortfall is also one of the biggest reasons that these teams have to run blind. That's why they're running in the dark. One, they perhaps may not have the education or knowledge of how these channels work, but secondly, there's also no parameters around like what we should be measuring. Have you put any strategies in place personally or frameworks around how you identify which points of data you should be looking at, what people can do to implement culture and procedures within their companies that get people looking at the right things beyond the high level stuff, like beyond the revenue, the inquiries, the sales? Where should the focus be?
Yeah, literally, because I've built these teams from scratch here in a couple of companies. So, for example, at Founder, I was built out the sales funnel and conversion team. So in a funnel, it's a little bit different to traffic, but data needs context, and what gets measured gets improved. So with a funnel, it's just every touch point, and then you're just trying to keep improving that. But for my team, it's no good for me to be like, oh, this is what you need to measure. Then there's a benchmark. And then a lot of people want the industry benchmark. No, often you need to set your own benchmark in your company and then try to improve it. You can look at industry benchmarks, but I think you need to set your own internal benchmarks as well. And then there needs to be the decision tree of how to improve it. Okay, if it's below where we want to be hitting, then there needs to be that. But to go through all of that would take me a long time because there's a lot of, it just depends, right? That's what you should be saying as a marketer. It depends. If your click-through rate's low, it depends how to fix it. If your conversion rate's low, it depends on how to fix it.